And we're live once again. What's up, everybody? What's up, Breakthrough bloggers and all the other people who are watching this live stream? Very excited to be here with you again today in my home office here in San Diego, California. And I'm here with my lovely assistant and happiness hero, as we like to call her, Mindy. Mindy, what's up? How are you today?
Hey, how's it going? You
Thank
at your new anchor desk?
Yes, right? Does it look like I'm at like an anchor desk or something? I need like a little rectangular image to pop up every time we talk about something new. But we also have Nathan Barry with us from nathanbarry.com. Previous guest on the SPI podcast, a wonderful episode that was talking about a lot of amazing things he's done. And we have him on today to field a lot of questions that you all have in terms of how to take that information in your head and package it the best way possible in terms of pricing, promotion, marketing, email funnels, all that great stuff. Nathan's sort of mastered that. And I also have to give you credit, Nathan, for introducing me to Gumroad as well, a product service actually we've been using to promote the Smart Podcast Player, and it's done really, really well for us. So let's all welcome Nathan. Nathan, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Pat. Thanks for having me on. I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. Now, Mindy will field the questions and sort of lead the discussion, so take it away.
Yeah, well, so one of the things, Nathan, that I think is really, really cool and exciting about you is that you have a really great split in your business between both creating and teaching. And so I was hoping you could just maybe start us off with a little, filling us in about how you got into being in business on your own, and kind of walk us through a little bit of your creation projects and then your teaching projects.
Sure. So the quick background is when I was just getting into high school, I learned that you could write code and make things on the internet, and you could just learn that and make a change and instantly see the results. And so that got me into learning web design and Photoshop, and then not long after that, I learned you could make money building websites for people, and that was pretty cool. So later, I dropped out of college in order to focus full-time on freelancing. Later joined a startup, led the design team for 3 years or so. Started building iPhone apps on the side, and then quit that job to focus on that as well as consulting. And then got into writing books and wrote a couple books on design, the App Design Handbook and designing web applications. And then from there, just got into writing more books and caring more about marketing, and then eventually built an email marketing company called ConvertKit. So it's like a competitor to MailChimp and Aweber. And that and writing the book Authority, which is my book on marketing and self-publishing, that pretty much brings us to now. So I guess that's my really quick story. But as far as time spent creating products versus teaching, most of my products are teaching. So they're either a book where it's directly teaching, or in the case of ConvertKit, it's a tool, I guess, an email marketing product. And in that case, what's being sold isn't directly teaching, but I try to work so much teaching and education into it that it actually really becomes a core part of the product, because I find that even if you have a tool to sell, that's not enough. You've got to help customers get set up. So when you're teaching things to new customers, you're not just teaching them, okay, here's how to send out an email broadcast. Here's how to set up a landing page with the tool. That's not enough. You've got to take it a step further and say, like, okay, once you have a landing page, here's how you get traffic to it. Here's how you build an audience. Because in the case of ConvertKit, customers are successful not when they know how to complete an action in the tool, but since it's an email marketing tool, they're successful when they have hundreds or thousands of email subscribers. And successful customers stick around, and so I put as much time as possible into teaching everything, teaching them how to get subscribers, how to interact with their list, how to launch products, just everything. If customers are successful, the business will be successful.
That's super smart. And for everybody out there listening or watching to this, if you want more of Nathan's sort of how he got started story, you can go to smartpassiveincome.com/session75. That was the number episode that he was on. And at that time, Nathan, you had said that you were earning, or you had earned, over $200,000 in self-publishing. just
Yeah.
some of the ebooks that you've had. I'm sure it's, can you give us any insight on how well you're doing now?
Let's see. I took a little time off recently, and so revenue dropped. But I'm just gonna look up
But that's
some
awesome,
numbers.
though. I mean,
I can go
that
into
gives you hands on that.
Gumroad and see a total. So I've got $471,000 in lifetime sales in Gumroad.
And that's
Uh,
just the ebooks that you've sold. That's not ConvertKit, or is it?
that's not ConvertKit. That does include a Photoshop course and a product launch course that are video products. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, and actually, that's what Gumroad has paid out to me. So if you included, plus 5% to that, we're getting close to that $500,000 mark in. I guess we're at like 20 months into this, so it's it's a good business.
It is.
Great. And a lot of people are writing ebooks. A lot of people are publishing their information. What do you feel makes you, so successful with this? I mean, there's a question here, and sorry, Mindy, this kind of goes with
All
Peter's
good.
question here. He says, "What's your 80/20 of blogging? How are you getting, such good results?" And you just said you took time off. I mean, what's really working for you best?
So really stellar content. I feel like a lot of other people, I learned this lesson from other people, but you don't put out, 300 word blog posts every day. Instead, uh, even if you publish once a week or every other week, you put out really great content that's in depth. And then you give away more content. So the blog post, whole bunch of free content, and at the end of it, you say, here's more free content in trade for an email opt-in. And then usually after they opt into the email list, I have an email sequence that's giving out even more free content and gradually pitches them on a product. And so by the time anyone on my list or anyone who's come in contact with me receives any kind of a pitch, they've gotten so much free content from me that I hope is really, really good, that I try to make great. That the products that I'm selling tend to sell really well because there's so much trust built up. So I'd say just focus on really long, in-depth, detailed content. If I'm writing a post that, like something on product launches, that I want it to be really good, then what I'll do is, I'll say like, could this be a chapter in a book? There's a post that I wrote for Smasher Magazine a while ago on product launches, and it's like 4,500 words long. And I followed that same idea where at the end I had a strong call to action to an email course, and that got me 1,000 email subscribers just from that one post. And I think it's just because really, really high quality content, as well as a strong call to action to get people on an email list, it just does well. So that's the thing that I would point to. There's design and other stuff that plays into that. But I would start with great content and then figure out design later.
That is, you make it sound so very simple. It's such a simple concept, but it's really just predicated around a lot of very hard work and doing a really good job with your content. One of the questions we have here from Inspired by Reason is, how did you come to believe in yourself as an expert in the field or industry that you chose? So, you said you were just doing so well with your work that you just dropped out of college to focus on that. That seems like a really bold move. That was really you deciding that you were good enough at this that you didn't need the experts of, say, your college professors to tell you were good at this. Can you talk a little more about making those decisions that yes, I know what I'm talking about here?
Yeah, so I'd been working professionally as a designer. Let's see, by the time I wrote my first book, for probably 6 years or so. And one thing that one good rule of thumb is if people pay you to do something, they believe you're enough of an expert at that you're worth paying. At the time, I was billing out my time at about $100 an hour, and so there were a lot of people that thought I was expert enough at it to be worth $100 an hour. And so that was, I still didn't necessarily feel like I was qualified enough to write a book, but then that got me thinking that, you know what, these people pay me, I have a lot to share, and there's a whole lot of people that know less about this topic than I do. And so, just going from there, what is it? Oh, when it came to writing a book about designing apps,
Hmm.
I've designed really a lot of apps, but none that are truly major. Like, you know, I hadn't designed the Facebook app or something really, really big like that. But I just thought I've got plenty to share. There's things that I can teach, and so I put that in a book and built expertise over time. It's not like uh, I guess the way I always say it is that people don't teach because they're experts. They become experts through teaching.
Mhm.
And so if you never start teaching, you're never going to become an expert unless like you have some, PhD in nuclear physics or some ridiculous credentials. But I don't think people watching have that. So if you have skills that people pay you for, um, those people perceive you as an expert already.
And well, you said that with the apps that you designed, that none of them were really major, but I'm thinking particularly of your One Voice app.
Mhm.
Like that's an incredibly specific, useful tool that will change, that changes the users, basically changes their life. Can you maybe just talk just a little bit about that app? Because I think it's such an interesting tool.
Yeah, so that was an app. Basically, if you have like nonverbal autism or some other reason that you can't speak, then you use it on the iPad and it has a bunch of tiles on it. Each tile has a picture or an icon and then a short phrase. And so you use those to build a sentence, and that has synthesized speech. So it speaks for you. So when the iPad came out, it was a pretty big deal because uh, people before were using these ruggedized touchscreen PCs that cost about
My,
$10,000 and had a half
my
hour.
older my older brother had one when he was in middle school. He has autism, and it was like carrying around a small suitcase.
Yeah, so when I got into building that, I was just looking for a project to help me learn to program in Objective C, the language of uh, you know iPhone and iPad, and it turned into a really big thing, and I ended up selling that last fall, and
Nice.
mainly we get into why I sold it, but mainly because it didn't align with the other products that I was doing. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah.
That's cool. In terms of your ebooks, again, I want to keep going back to ebooks because I
Yeah.
feel like that is one of the easiest ways for people to get started with making money online. Why self-publish versus going the traditional route? What were your decisions, and do you feel that would you have done it differently, or is there anything sort of second question, is there anything you would have done differently when you first started publishing ebooks on your own?
Yeah, let's see. So for the first question, why self-publish? Everything I did was trying to maximize revenue. So I haven't sold that many copies of books. Um, despite the revenue numbers that we talked about, I've sold probably less than 5,000 copies total between all my books. Um, so everything I was doing was for maximizing revenue, not reach. And so that drives a few decisions, like higher prices, and tiered pricing. That's something that you couldn't do really at all if you traditionally publish.
Mhm.
Um, Also, I really like having a direct relationship with my readers. I spoke at a publishing conference recently and said, asked everyone in the audience to raise their hand if they could, you know, today send out an email to more than 50% of their readers. And out of like 200 people in the room, 0 hands went up.
Hmm.
Just me. Because since I sold through Gumroad, I had email addresses. Really, I had valid email addresses for about, say, 99% of the people who have purchased my books. And so I can contact them. That means I can uh, stay in touch with them, continue building trust, cross-sell to other things. Whereas if you sell on Amazon or anything like that, you don't get contact information. You can try to work out some little thing where you can, try to get people to come back to your site, but uh, it's not as good. So pricing, direct access to readers, and then as far as traditionally published, I probably didn't even think that I could get a book deal of any kind, um, and so I figured I would get rejected, and so I just bypassed that step entirely
You
and
just
never.
chose yourself.
What's that?
You just chose yourself.
Yeah, that's one way to think of it. The other way to think of it is I was too scared to ask, but I like your version better.
So that's my version. And I mean, at this point, your name is like completely synonymous with Gumroad, or Gumroad's name is completely synonymous with you. I rarely ever hear them mentioned separately. That it's always and with that, the tiered pricing model with your sales. Can you talk more about tiered pricing and maybe explain the concept if someone hasn't heard of it before? Although I think most of our audience has, but just what you've learned from using tiered pricing as a way to sell products.
Yeah, and if possible, some sort of like, X is one tier, X times whatever is the next tier, just so we can get some specific figures. I mean, when you mentioned earlier that you're almost at $500,000 with eBooks, but you've only had 5,000 customers, I mean, everybody think about that. That's not very many people.
Yeah.
And that's $500,000. So, like you were saying earlier, higher price per item, which you've been able to do through the value you've provided and also the relationships that you're creating, which I think is a no-brainer if you're going for revenue, as opposed to reaching as many people as possible, which people going traditional are probably thinking of doing. Definitely the higher prices and the way you've done it is the way to go. So if you can give us some insight on the tiered pricing, like Mindy said, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so the first thing is you want to start by pricing based on value. So if we're talking multiples for our price tiers, I don't want that first price to be $5 or $10. I have this good friend that sells Photoshop brushes that are amazing, and he sells them for like $5 each. And I'm just like, let's double or triple that price as a starting point, and then let's add price tiers on top of that. So the first way to think about pricing based on value is what's your product going to be used for? How much time is it going to save? If you're teaching a skill that other people use to make money, that's incredibly valuable. So Pat, I'm thinking back to your Green Exam Academy, and studying for the LEAD exam. That's an incredibly valuable skill that you're teaching. They're going to use that to make lots more money. You can price based on value. So you're not going to price that at like, because one way to think about pricing it is, okay, a book is like $15, but this is an ebook, so it should be $9. This is an ebook that's not even being published by a real company, so maybe it should be $5. This is my first time and I have no audience. Let's go with $2. Like, that's the good way to be broke forever.
Vermeet has the same story with his first book too. And I remember when I priced my product, it was for those exact same reasons. I wanted to be the low-cost, affordable one in the industry. All the other books were much, much higher. And as a result of that, I learned through raising my price later, after getting some great advice from others, that essentially by lowering the price, I was decreasing the perceived value of my product. And I actually sold more of it when I increased the price.
Yeah. So the way to think about it is like with one of my design ebooks. You're a designer at, say a mid-sized software company. If you learn these new skills, level up a little bit, that'll make you far more likely to get a raise. Let's say it's a 5% raise. 5% of $70,000, $80,000. We're talking a meaningful amount of money. So we're talking that an investment in a book could have a key role in giving you could be worth thousands of dollars a year. So all of a sudden, $39 for a book, not so expensive. But then what happens is when you're teaching skills that make money, often those make more money for a company. So I used to lead design at the software company. So I had 4 designers working for me, and I want them to get better, and I want them to be faster, and I want to save time everywhere possible. And I also have the company credit card. And so anytime I can buy something that's going to save my team time, I'm going to do that, because I'm just making a trade-off. These employees are expensive to have them working. So if I can save them an hour, that's actually worth really a lot of money to me. And so then when I'm looking at buying a book, if there's a book for $39, that's great. But there's no difference to me when I'm holding the company credit card between $39 and $250. And so if there's a package in there that looks like it's going to save my team members a lot of time, maybe it's going to do some more of the implementation for them, or it's going to shortcut the learning process, and that's even 5 times as much. That's a no-brainer, because $250 to a company that spends $1 million a month on payroll, absolutely nothing. And so that's why you have those tiered packages. So the way I like to think about it is the base packages tell you here's how to do it, and this is for training products. So here's how to do it, here's what you should do, and then the higher packages try to do as much of it for you as possible. So one of my base packages will be a book. One of my top packages is going to have like code samples and Photoshop files and templates and all of that. And so people can look at that and go, oh, this template's probably going to save me 3-4 hours. The cost to my company is, say, $50, $80 an hour in the design world. It pays for itself incredibly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking another example, let's say you just did, let's say you sold like nonfiction or fiction books. This is one I get pretty often, especially for people who want to say like, sure, your ideas work for that, but how are they going to work over here?
Right.
So as an example, with fiction books, you again have one part of the market that's going to be willing to pay more than others. Because you've got people who are just going to read your book and be like, oh, that was fun, I was entertained. And then you're going to have people who love it. And so you want to give those people more. So you have just the book. Let's say you price that at $15. And then as a premium package, maybe at $25, you include a behind-the-scenes video where you're talking about how you wrote the book, why you made some decisions that you did. Maybe in with that you include a short story of some other things like that goes into a little more detail about a particular character. And then you can include like some of the artwork that was going to be the cover or some behind-the-scenes, stuff like that. So
Like
I would say...
Like the special features on a DVD?
Yeah, exactly. Because different people are going to be willing to pay different amounts. So if you only give that one price, everybody's going to pay, that one price. So what that means, going back to my books, is the freelancer who's just scraping by is going to buy the book for $39, and the company that has a budget of tens of thousands of dollars a year is just going to buy the $39 book, because if you don't give them any more options. So the results of this, the first time I did it, it doubled revenue on my book. The times after that, I tweaked a few of the things, and it has ever since then has always tripled revenue. And I don't know of many other things that when you implement them have such a huge impact on revenue for relatively little effort.
That's awesome.
You asked about multiples. I would say so 1x, 2x, and 5x. So that would be $40, $80, $200 if you just need something to start with.
Do you think the gap between 2x and 5x, have you played around with that? Because I've heard some other things from people saying, maybe it should be 4x and 5x because, if the top level price is essentially just a little bit more, they'll just go for that one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's some stuff like that. I don't know that I've seen that many people play it out in practice. I guess I felt like I always wanted to... what people do is if you show them here's everything that's in it and it's $250, they're going to like assign value to all the little things. And so I don't know, it always felt a little weird to me to have something where it's like all this is worth this much and then this thing added only adds $10 or $20 to the cost.
Right.
So you have to anchor it in the right way where you say like, you're paying for all of this, but if you buy this package, you're getting this other thing for free. That way you can't assign a ridiculously low value to it. It's worth playing with.
Do you include any bonuses? Like you're just saying free bonuses as opposed to just adding to those tiered packages?
I don't. Yeah, there's a whole thing. I think Derek Halpern talks about it a lot as far as using bonuses like for time-limited things. If I create content, I want it to get out to everybody. Like I can't stand the thought of creating a bunch of content and then being like, only the people who buy in the first 72 hours get it.
Sure.
So I tend to run sales, but there's so much to play around with that I just haven't done.
Yeah.
So you run sales rather than just cutting off availability at a certain point. How do you determine when to run a sale or how much of a discount you're going to give?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how to determine when to run a sale? I do about once a year per product when I launch the new edition of that product. And so when the product comes out, and then when a new version of that product launches, which is roughly every year. And I don't run sales for like Black Friday or anything like that. I thought it was great, because when Black Friday was coming around, I had some automated email sequence that was going out to somebody, and they were like, "Well, I'm just going to wait to buy on your Black Friday sale," and I was like, "I don't do sale,"
No, I like that. I really like that model.
Yeah, so I tell people, when we launch a new edition, there will be a little bit of a discount. I do 20% because it's enough to motivate people to buy right then. I feel like if you offer a 5% discount on a book, it's just like, why are you even bothering me? That's not going to motivate anybody. 10% doesn't really even motivate anybody. And then, let's see. I forgot the other question.
That's okay. We were just talking about bonuses and sales.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic information, I think. Mindy, do we want to get to a couple of the questions here? And if any of you watching this are trying to find out how to ask questions, just head on over to smartpassiveincome.com/hangout. It'll take you to the Google plus Hangout page, or the Hangouts on Air page, where you can then open up the Q&A box, and we're fielding the questions there. But Mindy, why don't you we take some of the questions here? Some of them are getting bumped up the queue quite a bit from all the other users.
Absolutely. Well, one of the questions, well, first, we just have a really great comment here from Dennis, who just says that you have great content and that he's never been disappointed by anything you've released, which is really fantastic. So I want to ask a question here from John, and he's wondering that when you got started, did you fear reaching out to bigger people in your space, either to write a guest post for their blog or to interview them, or to try to get interviewed by them? How did you overcome that fear of being the new guy?
That's a good question. I don't think I was ever too afraid of getting rejected over email. Definitely in person. But what I realized is basically the worst thing is people can do is say no. Nobody that I'm going to request to interview is going to be like, no, and now I hate you and will never do business with you. They're just going to be like, hey, sounds like a cool thing you're doing, but sorry, I'm too busy. It's like, okay, and that's it. I will say there's plenty of people that I reached out to interview that did say no, or a lot that never responded. And some level of persistence helps, but the other thing is I found that just working your way kind of up a chain helps. So, for example, I reached out to Jason Fried of 37 Signals to interview him for my book on designing web applications, and he would be perfect to interview for that book. And I never got a response. But at the same time, I reached out to Ryan Singer, who leads design at 37 Signals. Fantastic designer, just as good of a person to interview, but not nearly as public. And so Ryan got back to me and said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And then what happened is I did the interview with Ryan. I published it on my blog. It turned out really well. Ryan tweeted it, and then I saw that Jason retweeted it. And so then I'm going, okay, in the last 5 minutes, Jason Fried has probably been to my site, seen that I did an interview with his coworker, and he thought it was good enough to share. So right then I sent Jason Fried another email saying like, hey, saw that you retweeted the interview with Ryan. Love to do a similar one with you. And he said, sure. How's this evening at 5 o'clock sound? He just threw out a time, and I was like, it actually, the time didn't work at all, but I made it work, and we got the interview done and in the book, and people loved it. So
sweet.
So you kind of have to work your way up the chain, and it's the sort of thing when someone asks you to be on a podcast or something like that. Now I'm in the habit of going and looking at who else they've interviewed, and it's just.
And you just came out with your new podcast.
I did. Yes. Yeah, just over the weekend.
Congratulations, awesome. Everybody should listen to it.
Absolutely, right. So we've got another question here that is getting a lot of plus ones here. People want to know, hypothetically speaking, what would you tell a person who had only 2 weeks to launch a product? What would their first steps be?
So it depends on whether or not they have an audience or not.
So
because
let's
even if you
first,
have an
yeah,
audience, it's still hard.
let's first assume that they do have an audience, and then let's assume that they don't have an audience.
Okay, so the first thing I would do, let's see, we're 2 weeks out. I would send an email where the first paragraph spells out some details, like some concrete details to say, here's the product. It's launching, on this day, July 22nd or whatever, and maybe a little something to hint at some price anchoring. And so that would be short. And then at the bottom of that email would just be, or the rest of the email would be something that really demonstrates your expertise in that area. So a sample chapter from the book, yeah, that kind of thing. Something that shows, okay, this guy really knows what he's talking about. Because you don't have that much time to build credibility there. And then after that, say a week out, I'd send an email that has all kinds of information. So it starts to talk about pricing, giving an idea of here's what's going to be included, here's the packages, and then also teaches. Then a couple days before, I'd send an email that like answers every question. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get every audience member to make a decision of whether or not they're going to buy before I give them an opportunity to buy. The last thing I want to happen is them go, yeah, this thing Nathan's working on is kind of cool. I'll check it out eventually, and then send them a launch day email to say go buy it, and they go to the sales page and they're like, yeah, I don't know if it's for me. Oh, hold on, I'm getting a phone call, and like forget about it. Or they'll go like, yeah, I think I want to buy this. You know what? I don't have a credit card at my desk. Let me go get one. Maybe I'd rather make a sandwich, and then just never buy the product. So what you want is to convince them so they're like, okay, I'm ready to buy. Where's the link? And you're like, oh, that comes tomorrow at 9 a.m. And they're like, wait, I'm ready to buy. I can't even buy it yet? And you're like, yep, this time exactly, you can go buy it. And that way they're waiting for the launch email. And when it comes, they know. They get that email and they go, oh, right, I already decided I'm going to buy that. Here's my credit card. There's no thinking at that point. They've done all the thinking earlier. So you have to send a lot of emails leading up to the launch. You have to provide a lot of information. But yeah, and then what I would do is I'd have some kind of urgency in there. So either the launch is only available for 72 hours, or there's a bonus, or the most common one that I do is 20% off within 24 hours. Something to say, get this now, don't put it off, because you'll have people who made a decision to buy, but they're busy, they're at work or something like that, and they'll just put it off indefinitely if you let them. So you provide an incentive to buy now. And then the other thing that lets you do is send an email near the end of that window and say like, hey, there's 3 hours left in this sale. I hate for you to have to pay more for this than you have to. And those sort of reminder emails drive a ton of sales. So
absolutely.
That's what
so you don't do any like webinars or any sort of live streaming thing to make a launch, more grand?
I'm just starting to get into that.
Okay.
But I haven't. So I would say that 99% of my business revenue does not include webinars. But that's not like a purposeful thing. That's just like I'm figuring out this whole online business world.
Yeah, well, thank you for your authenticity, but I think that just shows everybody that you don't need to do that. But it'll be interesting to hear from you later on how your webinar strategy, if you implement it, how that works out for you. So that would be pretty cool.
I'm just as excited to find out as anybody else.
So how would you tweak that strategy if you didn't have an audience already?
Then it depends on if you have a network where you could do an affiliate launch to someone else. But those
that's what Caleb did when he launched his DIY video guidebook. And obviously you're good friends with Caleb, and he didn't have an audience for that product yet, and that's exactly what he did. So just you're right. That's the best way to go.
But he had somewhat of he had a little bit of an audience. And so what he did is in the couple weeks leading up to it, he put out some really great posts on his blog. And he asked a lot of friends to share it, and everyone was happy to because it was such good content. And it was really relevant, Like Pat, you and I are recording videos all the time. And so if someone says, hey, here's a better way to do it, or here's how to streamline it. We're like, yeah, we'll share that without even thinking twice about it.
Yeah,
If
totally.
it's
Actually, he created a video for my audience that I posted on my YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
I talked a little bit about his product there as well, but it was extremely helpful. And because we obviously had our relationship together too, I mean, I was more than likely going to post it up for him.
Yeah, and he came on my show, and we did a whole thing to my email list, and so yeah, you got to leverage other people's audiences because you just don't have time to build one. If you can't leverage other people's audiences, like Caleb, he's been friends with everyone for a long, long time. He's helped all these people out, like myself and you, in so many ways that for him to do that wasn't a huge ask because he didn't have to prove credibility.
Right.
If he didn't have those relationships, then 2 weeks is just not enough time. You gotta build an audience over time and develop those relationships and all of that. So.
Right, and that sort of reminds me of when me and Derek Halpern first hooked up together. He was trying to get in front of everybody's large audience, and the way he did that was by getting on live calls with them, and people like Chris Brogan, myself, Corbett Barr, a lot of other people, actually walking through everybody's website and telling them what they could do to increase their conversions into their email list.
Right.
And I posted that live, and he provided a ton of value for me in that way. I hardly knew the guy, but I wanted to know more because he just helped me out so much. So definitely do what you can to help those authority leaders who have that audience that you want to get in front of. Do what you can to help them, and the law of reciprocity is in play there for sure.
Yeah, and because I think there's another tendency that people might have of like they might think, okay, Pat would promote my product if he only knew how good it was. So Pat, why don't you and I get on a call and I'll demo it for you and I'll show you just how good it is. Now will you promote it? And that's because they're thinking like, oh, okay, that's what Derek did. But that's not at all what Derek did. He provided a ton of value for free, value that you could pass on to your audience without asking for anything.
Right. He helped increase I remember the specific number too, the number of opt-ins when people arrive on my About page, he increased the opt-ins from I think it was 40% to 443%, or it increased by 443%.
By 443%, yeah.
Which is ridiculous. People weren't opting in 4 times. That's not how it went.
Right.
That would be impressive.
Before I get to the next question, we have a lot of requests for what camera are you using, Nathan, because your video quality is amazing.
Oh, it's like an $80 Logitech HD camera. I think David Siteman Garland recommended it, and I think that's where I heard about it. But yeah, it's totally worth it.
I'm actually using that same camera, but I'm on my laptop right now, and it's connected here, so it's not quite as high quality. But it can get extremely high quality, and it looks great on your end, Nathan.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
So. It's HD or Logitech HD Pro webcam, and here's the key numbers: C920.
Nice.
C920.
Oh, it looks like someone else is. I'm changing the subject slightly, asking about who's selling the Photoshop brushes, and that's Kyle Webster.
Cool.
Who he does work for the New York Times and everybody else. He's truly fantastic, and it's criminal how low he sells this product for. So
that was for Mike Maloney on Twitter, actually.
Yeah.
So cool. Great question.
Also, just tell us all the name of your new podcast.
Oh, I went for a totally original and brainstormed a brilliant name, and it's called The Nathan Barry Show. I love it. So the reason I did that actually is I procrastinated for like a year and a half launching that podcast, and I realized one of the things holding me back was trying to come up with such a good name, and I was like, oh, what's it going to be? Like Chris Gillibo has The Art of Nonconformity, and I think that's really cool. And you've got a Nerd Fitness shirt on right now, and so I wanted some great name that tied together this whole community, and so I put off launching a podcast until I had a great name. And then I realized, my community actually doesn't want a great name. They just want great content. And so I can slap any name I want on it within reason. And they're just thrilled that there's new episodes coming out. So I finally did that.
That reminds me of when I was in high school. Like for some whatever reason, all my friends we started creating business cards to try and like pretend we were all into business and
What?
stuff. Just to be cool, we have our business cards and like our talents on it and our phone numbers so people could hire us or something. But it was dumb because we didn't have a business. But we had cool looking business cards. But you got to
Nice.
work on that business first. And you're absolutely right. I mean, so many people make excuses like that to start when a lot of people don't just go for it. And I'm glad you did. And the Nathan Barry show is perfect. It's you.
Somehow I feel like that explains a lot, Pat, that you were passing out business cards in high school.
What does that explain, Mindy?
I don't know. That's really kind of dorky and awesome. I love it. But this conversation in particular, calling out Pat's shirt, ties into one of the questions here from Fernando. And he's wondering, like, after you get a base of readers and that sort of thing, is it worth selling physical products like T-shirts or, other things that might tie in? Do you feel like, there's a reason for those sorts of things?
I think if it fits with your audience. I think if I sold a shirt that said like the Nathan Barry Show or had my face on it, I think that'd be pretty dumb. So I'm gonna try it. No, not really. But if it matches your audience, like I'm thinking of a guy, Sean McCabe, who he blogs at SeanWest.com. So a lot of stuff is branded to his name. He's a fantastic designer, and he sells shirts and everything with his designs on them. And he's truly fantastic. So if it fits with your audience or that kind of thing, I would do it. For ConvertKit, that's a brand. That's my email marketing company. I'll come out with the shirts for that, and mostly just to give away to the best customers and stuff. So that I can wear it myself. So if you have a good brand and it's a fit with the community and you have something cool to put on it, totally do it. But don't just feel like, oh, Steve Cam has awesome Nerd Fitness shirts, so my blog won't be as successful until I come out with shirts, because that's clearly how he got his 200,000 email subscribers.
Right. No, they're great though, and I see people sporting them every once in a while, and it fits with his brand. You go to the gym, you get inspired by wearing a Nerd Fitness shirt, and there's a URL in the back, so it's kind of cool.
So we've got another question here about and this maybe goes back to the idea of like the Photoshop brushes, from Rashawn, asking about if you're making a product or a course that teaches people skills that rely on another tool that they have to buy, so something separate from your material, does that affect the way you would price something?
Good question, because Photoshop is expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. So if you were selling like, what's an example? I don't know. Like, I feel like Autodesk is someone who makes expensive software. Or Pat, there's got to be a bunch of software in the architecture industry that just costs a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, like Revit, AutoCAD. Those are two huge ones, right?
Yeah. So if I was selling a key tool for AutoCAD, and I was selling that for $10. That would be just completely a joke, right? Like, people would think, wow, this is probably the crummiest tool ever. Because, a lot of the software that you're selling into costs like $50 per seat per month or more. And so you've got companies that are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a month on using the software. So that would definitely influence my pricing. Whereas if I was selling
increase the price, you're saying.
Yeah, increased it by a lot.
Because I think maybe the question was coming from the idea of, well, they've already spent a lot of money, maybe we can hook them up a little bit.
Right, give them a discount.
So maybe a way to think about it in maybe a consumer version would be like if you were making a tool for Photoshop, which you have to spend money for, versus a tool for GIMP, which is free. You'd probably do freeware or something really cheap for GIMP, but you could go ahead and charge more for Photoshop.
I would avoid making anything for GIMP entirely.
Because it's free.
It's already an audience of people who say, there's the tool that we pay for. I don't want to pay for it, so I'm going to go with this. And I'm not going to make a product for people who have already demonstrated that they actively don't want to pay for something. Right. Like, it's one thing to say, like, oh, I like free things and all of that, but I feel like users of GIMP and some of those other ones are like, I do not want to pay for Photoshop. I want to get it for free. And so if they've already demonstrated that behavior, I wouldn't pursue them as an audience. But yeah, if there's a community where people are paying, hundreds or thousands of dollars for software, I would price my plugin accordingly and
Absolutely.
not give them a discount. I would say like, this is for businesses, so it starts at say $1,000.
Yeah. And if you have information that can help them use that really expensive product even better, you definitely want to
You price tier it
accordingly. Absolutely.
Yeah,
sure.
So then you say like, okay, here's the plugin for AutoCAD or whatever. It's $1,000 a year, or whatever that works out to. And then you also do another one where it's like, hey, we'll train your employees on how to use it, and that's a $5,000 workshop.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at how much people spend. Like, $20,000 to bring in someone to teach a software team for 2 days about how to use Scrum and Agile project management processes.
Mm-hmm.
Not a big deal to a lot of companies. We're talking paying someone $20,000 for 2 days, and so, it's all what the market can bear, what the companies are used to spending, and if there's a budget there.
So this brings up an interesting question. If somebody is in a niche that doesn't provide information or products or plugins or whatever for small businesses or even big businesses, they're targeting individual people. What's the approach then? It's completely different. Or would you say maybe you're in the wrong niche? Or if someone were just starting out, would you say, hey, maybe we could explore solutions for businesses that are willing to pay this kind of money?
Right. So the rule of thumb on this is, I would say, to have the most profitable niche is to teach skills that make money to people who have money. So if I teach design to designers, it helps them make more money. They're already professional designers, and so they have some amount of money, right? Mm-hmm. So it matches both those criteria. Knitting to 13-year-olds doesn't help them make money, and they don't have any money, so it fails both of those criteria. Another example would be like career skills to college students. It helps them make money, and it could be amazingly profitable for them, but they don't really have money. So it fails one of the two criteria, and then it's a toss-up of whether or not that's going to be how profitable of a niche is going to be. So if you fail both of those criteria, and you want to, you still want to pursue it because you care about that, then I would say, you've got to go with much lower prices. You're going to have a lot lower revenue, but that's okay. And I mean, we're in a world where a lot lower revenue might mean $50,000 a year. Like, it's crazy the numbers that are possible. And so then I would say, like, maybe you have to sell a $5 product, but then you should also have a $12 or $15 higher tier on that, and at least that higher tier will probably at least double your revenue. So even if you can't charge as much, still do tiered pricing. Just always tier your prices.
Yeah, I want to reiterate again. I think this is the third time we mentioned it here, but you don't need to serve the entire world. You know what I mean? I remember when I was on Mixergy, getting interviewed by Andrew Warner, I was talking to him about all the little niche sites and projects I had going on, and we talked about security guard training, HQ.com, and now I have like Food Trucker, and he asked me a question, well, why aren't you doing something bigger? Why aren't you trying to change the world? Why aren't you trying to create another Excel, something that everybody can use? And that was a great question. But I was like, I might not be changing the world, the entire world, but I'm changing small worlds in people's lives. And you don't need that big of a world to change. You don't need that many people. I mean, Kevin Kelly, look up Kevin Kelly, 1,000 true fans. There's a lot of debate around that, but the essential argument is you only need 1,000 true fans who are willing to pay you in order to make a great living. And like you said, if people are paying you, imagine 1,000 people, only 1,000 people in this world, close to 8 billion or whatever we're at now, paying you $50 a year. 1,000 people paying $50 a year for something. That's your $50,000 a year right there.
Yep. And if you live somewhere not too expensive, that's great. That's, well, I live in Boise. You can live fantastically on 50 grand a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's one thing that I want to point out where I kind of disagree with your audience approach a little bit.
Okay.
And this is something that I came across for when I got into selling products. I had this mindset of anywhere that I can make a good product that makes money is worth pursuing. So that meant I had iPhone apps targeting 3 different industries. Later on I had a WordPress theme site. Basically, I just pursued anything. And what I found is that one product wouldn't help me sell another. And so what I want to warn people about is that not all dollars are created equal. So I think it's better to focus on a single audience. And if you're thinking about pursuing multiple products, just ask yourself, if I promote this one product, is it going to help me get sales for this other product? So my first book on designing iPhone apps, the more I promote that, the more I talk about designing iPhone apps. It's not a 100% fit, but it does help me sell the book on designing web applications because they're both targeted at designers. And so when you look into other products, try to think, okay, how much overlap between these audiences am I going to get? Because sure, there could be some profitable niche somewhere else, but unless you have a really good reason for pursuing it, I wouldn't. I think you have a really good reason for pursuing like the food trucking site because education for your main audience is a fantastic reason for that.
And that's the reason I do it. But it's funny because people often ask me, well, should I do 5 different things like you do? My answer is always no. Stick with that one audience and think about how you could serve them vertically instead of sort of horizontally spreading yourself too thin. So I completely agree with you, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, so what I actually ended up doing is I went through, I guess it was last fall or so, I went through and sold off a bunch of products. So I closed down an iPhone app, sold another iPhone app, sold a WordPress theme site for $1,000. I just got rid of everything. It was a everything must go fire sale because I knew that I needed to sell it or shut it down, even if it made some amount of money, because I needed to focus on my core audience.
Awesome. And on Twitter, I just got a note from RJ saying, "Getting my question answered on the Hangout made my night." So that's
excellent. Well, now has question answered and has been called out. Like maybe we've made the rest of his week as well.
No, but thank you for. I mean, I don't want to brush over that point you just made. It's really important to really do what you can to serve that audience. And I know a lot of people, once they come out with a product, they think they've sort of won that game and want to move on to something else. And it's exciting to move on to something else. You want to prove it to yourself that you could do it again somewhere else. But you might also be doing your current audience a disservice if you don't give them the best that you can.
Yep.
So we've got a question here that's gotten a lot of attention, and I think it might be a good way to start to bring this home, which is, so let's say you're starting some new project, whether they've got here, whether it's like a podcast, a blog, a Hangout, a live Hangout on air, model. What would and you're starting from scratch, you don't have an audience. What is your suggested monetization progression going to look like to first just start covering your expenses and then become more substantial as you build that audience over time?
Yeah, so I like to build an audience with a product in mind. You could write and give away a whole bunch of information on a broad range of topics and slowly build an audience. And I actually did that for about almost a year. And I built, during that year, I built a following of about 100 people, 100 RSS subscribers. And it was, it wasn't a waste of a year because I figured out lots of things, but it certainly did not help me grow an audience. I think the better approach is to have a product to say I'm writing a book on designing iPhone applications, and then say, do you want to sign up to hear when that's available? Or there's this problem that I'm solving. Maybe it's I'm trying to think of random tools, like Pat, your podcast player, right? If someone else had come out with that and said, I've seen this issue that podcasters are having as far as a good player, I'm coming out with one, and maybe they put up a neat little landing page and just said, sign up to here when it's available, and started promoting that. And then they started writing about topics relevant to that and always linking back to it. Yet just the fact that you're working on a product gives you a lot of credibility. So before I was writing about random topics, and I was some designer writing about random topics. That doesn't give me any credibility, and that doesn't make an audience member think like, wow, I should subscribe to this guy. Instead, it's just not compelling at all. But when I came out and said, I'm writing a book on designing better iPhone applications, people thought, okay, one, he's got some credibility because he's doing something.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously at least thinks he's skilled and talented enough to write a book on the topic. And then there's an offer there, and there's a reason to sign up for when this product is available. So I think it gives focus to your writing. So after that, I took all my random writings and instead just focused on building a list about or building a list of people who wanted to design better software. And so I would focus on a product first, get a landing page up, and then start writing on a topic related to that product. So
awesome. Yeah. Great answer. And then this question was from Joey, and I believe the last question before that was from Cornelius. So just want to make sure you guys get your names out there too. Fantastic. We have about 3 more minutes, Minnie. Maybe we have time for one more question. And just want to thank everybody again for coming on tonight. This has been fantastic.
Well, okay, so here's a question that, and if you don't want to answer it, that's perfectly fair, but Ron is wondering what has been the biggest failure that you've had, and how did you push through that failure?
Let's see. So I've had lots of small failures around product launches and stuff like that that have been really educational experiences. The first one that came to mind right now it's kind of been maybe the last few months. My son was born recently, and that went really, really well, and all of that. And I took some time off, and that was fantastic. And then trying to get back into work again, just haven't been able to find the same motivation and get work done. Like for the last year and a half, basically, I kind of wondered when people were like, how do I find my motivation to build my products and work on my side projects? That I was just like, you know what? I don't have that problem. And over the last couple months, like I've really, really had that problem, and just finding motivation and focus has been incredibly hard. That's not really a particular failure, other than I guess it's just something that I'm really struggling with. And because I had a writing habit of writing 1,000 words a day I was pushing 700 days in a row. And through all this time, at some point in the last 30 days, I broke that habit. And I don't even know when it was, like what day I broke that habit, because I was so out of it. And so now, as far as how I'm overcoming that failure is just slowly. I started up my commit app on my iPhone, and I'm slowly tracking, getting that streak of 1,000 words a day back. It's at 7 days in a row now. And so I'm just setting a small goal. A day is a success when I write that 1,000 words. And whatever else happens, doesn't matter. The day's already a success. And so little wins, consistent progress, and that's how my plan is to get back on track.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate the candid response there. And, I have 2 kids of my own, so congratulations. It's awesome. Welcome to the club. Awesome. Thank you all for watching. That'll be the last question. This has been fantastic. As always, we have one of these every month, so stay tuned. Follow me on Google+, or on Twitter, or on Facebook. I mention when these come out every once in a while, or as often as they do come out. Thank you, Nathan, for coming on. Nathan, before I let you go, where should people go to get more information about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, so I'm going to do something that, as far as conversion rate optimization, you should never do. And I'm going to give 3 different links instead of, one strong call to action that you really should have. But my blog is nathanberry.com, My podcast is The Nathan Barry Show. I know you guys all love podcasts if you're here listening to Pat. So, go on iTunes, subscribe, rate, review, all of that. I would really appreciate it. And then if you want, there are a few questions on product launches. If you want more about product launches, go to nathanbarry.com/launch. And that's a free email course. It's about 30 days long, and it just talks about how to launch products. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate it. Mindy, any final words before we get going here?
For the Breakthrough Blogging community, we'll have this up in the library very soon. I'll send you an email when it's up there, and we'll have all these great notes in there. So that's it.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate it. Everybody look out for a new episode of the Smart Passive Income Podcast tomorrow. And as always, Ask Pat comes out 5 days a week. Again, Mindy is awesome. She's the one who produces the show and makes it all happen. And thank you. We'll see you all later. Nathan, appreciate it. And good luck to you in all the future ebook launches and ConvertKit and everything else you have going on.
Thanks.
All right. Take care. Bye, guys.